Hi, good morning. Can you hear me okay? Okay. My name is Rabbi Moti Reber. I am the executive director of an organization called Kansas Interfaith Action. We are a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit issue advocacy organization, and our mission statement reads, Kansas Interfaith Action is a statewide multi-issue advocacy organization that puts faith into action by educating, engaging, and advocating on behalf of people of faith in the public on a variety of racial, economic, and climate justice issues. What advocacy means is that we try to have an effect on policy on the state level. Although national politics gets most of the attention, and I would say at this point probably gets all of the attention, most of the issues that have a great impact on our lives happen in Topeka. So I know we're all kind of really worked up and disturbed by the news coming out of Washington, and I do want to speak to, I want to hold that, I want to acknowledge that. But part of my message is we have to take care of the things that are in front of us. Our best approach right now is to take care of the things that are in front of us. And to me, one of the things that's in front of us is the state legislature in Topeka, and that's where I do my work. Housing policy, transportation, energy policy, criminal justice, health policy, and so much more get decided underneath the level really of attention on the state level. And a lot of people will hear the word advocacy and think that it means politics, but advocacy is active citizenship. It's asking for what we want from the people who have the capacity, who are in the positions to help us get it. Faith-based advocacy is a time-honored endeavor in this country. From the beginning of this country, all social justice movements, from the abolitionist movement to the suffragist movement to the anti-war movement to the union movement to the environmental movement and of course the civil rights movement, have all been led or heavily influenced by people of faith. We are in a time-honored and righteous tradition. KIFA was established in 2016 as the moderate voice of faith in Kansas. So other states have councils of churches, and some organizations, some of the denominations have advocacy offices on the state level. But up until 2016, the only organized voice of people of faith in Kansas advocacy were from the far right. And usually that meant abortion and gay marriage was what the issue was in those days. So that left tens of thousands of people like yourself who are people of faith but didn't have a voice as people of faith in the state legislature. So that's the gap that we tried to fill. So we're nonpartisan in our approach, which means we don't support candidates or parties, but we are clear about what we believe, and we will use whatever resources are available to us to get it. And over the course of time, KIFA has gone from a fledgling organization trying to make its place in Kansas advocacy to a fairly well-established organization with 4 full-time staff members and a very strong coalition of mainstream voices of faith. KIFA is the state public policy office of the Central State Synod of the ELCA Lutheran Church here in Kansas. We also have partnerships with the Kansas-Oklahoma Conference of the United Church of Christ, with the Mercy and Justice team of the Great Plains Conference of the United Methodist Church, and with the Episcopal Diocese of Kansas. Our mission falls under what we call the 4 evils. So Dr. King had the 3 evils, which were militarism, racism, and poverty. So we have, there's been inflation since then, so we have the 4 evils. We add climate to that list. So it's racial and identity-based discrimination, economic justice, gun violence, and climate disruption. So anything that goes on in the legislature that has to do with one of those issues, we'll get involved with. Oftentimes as a sort of the faith voice of a coalition. That's the way we're most effective. So I spoke about this in more detail in the adult ed session, so many of you have heard this. I'll just kind of go through this fairly quickly. I think 3 things that we're really thinking about a lot right now are support of public education, support of LGBTQ, our LGBTQ siblings, and support and solidarity with immigrants. I think those are really important issues that we as people of faith need to really be engaged with. In the Kansas legislature, our priorities include full funding of public education and also the right of students to learn and not have somebody else tell my children what they're allowed to learn because of their values, not my values. Voting rights, economic justice, we have a housing and homelessness protocol. We're in an organization, we're in a coalition called Kansas Housing Advocacy Network working on housing and homelessness. We're working on promoting immunizations, childhood immunizations, which apparently are under question in this day and age, despite being the most kind of successful medical achievement in human history. And that is on the legal principle, which you may be familiar with, of choose life so that you and your children may live, which is from Deuteronomy. Following the 2024 election, it became apparent that KIFA needs to increase our focus on community building and mutual support. The day after the election, we had an online vigil to speak to the moment and to speak to the fear that people were holding and consternation. It was well received. We're probably going to continue to do that. We're planning a series of online KIFA conversations and also doing some in-person KIFA coffee houses, which are opportunities for relaxed informal conversations and community building. And I think we're planning one here at St. Andrews sometime within the next couple of months, so keep your eyes open for that. So that was all the preliminary stuff. Now I'm going to get to the sermon. I knew you were waiting for that. Chris particularly was waiting for that. So what is happening in politics today is the result of a concerted effort mostly by right-wing business interests and also religious interests, playing a very long game to pick apart the threads that have held society together. So if you think of the institutions that have been completely undermined, the press, universities, labor unions, and the church. And that project has largely succeeded, which explains a lot of how we got to where we are. People who come of age today no longer have the expectation that these institutions will work for them, or even that political activity can lead to meaningful change. The First Amendment is being undermined. The LGBT community is under concerted attack. Efforts to make our institutions fairer and more welcoming for racial and religious minorities are being crumbled up and thrown away. And the bloodshed in Gaza is proving what has been proven before, that even mass slaughter will be accepted if the population subjected to it is othered enough. And that's a lesson we should learn. We should have learned it already. It is all too easy when the winds of change blow for us to lose our way, to let those winds blow us off our feet, and to say, perhaps more in sadness than in anger, that the values we've articulated all this time were nice in their place, but they're no longer equal to the task, or that maturity or circumstance force us to accommodate that what's happening and to leave those values behind. But I believe this is something we must resist. For it is precisely at times like this, when everything is in question, that it's especially important to keep hold of our sacred values. So it's precisely when things are difficult or challenging that our sacred values can serve as a guide. The worth and dignity of the individual human being, diversity, nonviolence, democracy, anti-racism, care for the other, love. These are the very things that keep us tethered and balanced during times of upheaval. And progressive religious institutions have a particular responsibility in this regard because churches and synagogues are in the business of building community and teaching these sacred values. The reason KIFA works in and through communities of faith and people of faith is because if there's any institution that even purports to care about the common good, which is another sacred value, it's faith communities. Even if organized religion is in a period of decline, in large part because of the cruelty emanating from white supremacist Christianity and the inability of more moderate forms to effectively stand up to it, we meet many people who grew up in a church and they didn't leave because they stopped believing in those values, but because they believe that the institutions don't live up to those values. And when it seems like these sacred values are under attack, as now, then our first priority, even if we can't make political change, even if we can't pass what we want to pass, our first priority is to teach and advocate for the sacred values. So I think of Jewish history when Jews were really oppressed, and the most important thing was just passing the knowledge on to the next generation. If that's all we can do, then that's what we must do. And there is no one else to do it but us. We must become much more missional than organizational. The era of institutions is largely over, which I recognize is quite a thing to say at a church, but we have to deal with circumstances as we find them. The focus on protecting the institution of the church has led to an aversion to standing strongly in support of sacred values. Churches must speak up and speak out and must devote such resources as they have, financial and human, to build connections, to build resilience, and to develop and promote not themselves, but these sacred values. I am also strongly of the opinion that spirituality is hardwired into the human consciousness, and if it is not met, and if we don't meet those needs with good religion, then they will be met with bad, and I think we're seeing a lot of that too. Organizations like Kifa and congregations like St. Andrew's are an alternative to right-wing religion that purports to speak on behalf of God, and we serve a vital role in articulating a vision of love and care that we dare not surrender. There are three aspects of this work that we always must keep in mind. First is the actual political change piece. How do we make the work we do count in terms of material benefit for people in need? Because that's really what it comes down to. The second is our own self-care, building for the long haul. How do we maintain our equilibrium enough to be able to continue this very difficult work through trying times? How do we build resistance in the face of climate disruption? How do we build solidarity in the face of the genocidal suppression of trans identity? How do we defend ourselves and each other from armed MAGAs full of self-righteousness and rage? This is the work we need to do in our congregations and in our lives as well. We have to be clear about what we believe. We believe that everyone is created in the image of God and that everyone has the right to equal protection under the law. We believe in work toward a multiracial, multicultural democracy where everyone has what they need to survive and thrive: food, housing, healthcare, meaningful work, a functional democracy. We do this work not because we think it will be easy or even because we will see success in our lifetimes. We do this work because we still believe that the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice, and that, God help us, all we need is love. This is not optimism and it's not hope. It's faith, the belief in things not seen. We do this work because we believe the world can be a better place and that we can help to make it so. And that is so important, I'm going to say it again. We do this work because we believe that the world can be a better place and that we can help to make it so. We ask God to help us in this work, and we find God in this work and in each other. The one thing we can't do is give up. This is always an option for white people with some means, to sort of go back and tend our own. But we can see who it leaves behind. Noam Chomsky says something really powerful in this regard, and if you ever thought you'd hear a rabbi at church quoting Noam Chomsky, then you win. We have two choices. We can be pessimistic, give up, and help ensure that the worst will happen, or we can be optimistic, grasp the opportunities that surely exist, and maybe help make the world a better place. Not much of a choice. And if we truly turn to this work, this sacred work of carrying the sacred values into the future, then as the prophet Isaiah said in this morning's text, if you draw out your soul to the hungry and satisfy the afflicted soul, then your light will rise in darkness and your gloom will be as the noonday, and we will be called repairers of the breach, restorers of the sacred paths. Thank you.